Well, we don't sleep to the extent that we're trying to solve the problems, and I'm good to the extent that I'm very confident that if we carry on the course that we're currently pursuing, Nigeria will be in a much stronger position economically, and the challenges that we're going through today will become a thing of the past. We all know how we got here. What everybody is not clear about is how we're getting out of this. We were, and I won't repeat it, overly dependent on oil. And then, of course, the price of oil fell, and we're having to adjust. It's very difficult. It's almost like losing half of your salary and still having to keep your life going. So, of course, there are very painful adjustments and painful decisions to be made. But what we're trying to do is to make sure that going forward, we're not in that position again. So, and what we're seeing, Nigerians are responding. There's a lot of activity happening in agriculture. There's activity happening in the creative arts. I was in Lagos yesterday with the Nollywood and the music and the entertainment industry. There's a lot going on now outside of oil, and we're trying to build a much broader economy that will make sure that we don't end up in this situation again.
Talking about the creative industry, I'm aware that some money have been voted for the creative industry. Talk to me about that.
Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, yesterday wasn't really about money. It was really about reflecting the fact that the creative arts now 1.4% of GDP. Now, to put that in perspective, oil is 10. So without any government assistance, without much government support, this industry has grown organically. And what government now needs to do is to support them so that they can do much more. They're a big employer. They're a big export earner, where our films and our music are all over the world. And that's without government support. What government needs to do to support them, which is what was discussed yesterday, is better enforcement, better protection of their intellectual property. It's not that they need money per se. Without money, they've been extremely creative in getting to where they've gotten to, but what they need from government is protection so that they can earn more revenue for the work that they do. And we've committed to doing that.
Okay, is there really a clarity on how the nation will get out of this recession? You may say, why am I asking that question? Of course, I do know of the ERJP, I do know of some steps in other areas. But what Nigerians have been saying is that we need to see actions in terms of the hardship is really there in the face of Nigerians. There's no day you don't go out and people ask you for money, beg you for money. Even for me, there's no day that I don't give out my widow's mite. So is there a clarity? Because there's been talks, oh, this administration has no clarity. What is the blueprint? Is it about gathering people together?
Well, I think, again, to answer that question, we've got to go back. And how did we get here? We got here because all we were really relying on was oil, then the price of oil went down. We found ourselves in a very difficult situation. And you'll remember that up until probably about 2009, 2010, the oil price was quite low. It was around 51. Then it went up as high as 110. Now, we adjusted our expenses upwards. Okay, the good days are here. We increased salaries, we increased our expenditure. Unfortunately, we didn't spend on the right things. We spent largely on recurrent. We weren't spending on capital, we weren't spending on roads, we weren't spending on rail, we weren't spending on power. And those are the things that are needed for businesses to thrive. So we have so much opportunity in Nigeria, but what's the problem? We don't have the infrastructure yet, but we're putting it in place to take advantage of those things. Take, for example, a very simple example, take the fishing industry. We import, I think the figure is about $350 million worth of fish. Meanwhile, if you go to, I come from a riverine area, fish rots every day. What's the problem? We can't move it. We don't have power to freeze. We don't have good roads to move it or rail to move it to where it's needed. So those are missing and lost opportunities in the economy. And when we fix those things, you fix them permanently. You then create jobs in those areas. You create activity, and the price of food, goes down. When you are dependent on importation for your food, you're going to have the problems that we have now, because once the dollar moves, everybody's cost of living, cost of feeding goes up, at a very rapid rate, and that's what's really causing the hardship. But we have to solve it permanently. And that solving is not just for now, it's really about the future generation. The rate of our population increase is so large that if we don't fix these problems today, we could end up, in a far worse situation tomorrow. So these problems that we're solving, putting the rail back, trying to fix power, investing in roads, rebuilding some of our institutions, they're very fundamental. And the good thing about capital spend is you spend, as long as you maintain it, it's not repeated. You move on to the next project. And that's really what we need to do to get